Hey, welcome to episode 3 of Your Brain on God. This is Darryl.
And this is Aaron.
And today we're going to be talking about something we call a community of projections. We'll be touching on the human desire to be connected to community and how sometimes that could lead us to present ourselves to be a way that maybe we actually are not. And
that's bad news, Darryl.
That's bad news, Aaron. And sometimes that can involve a lot of shame, and a feeling of isolation and loneliness. And we're going to be talking about how we can take some steps to maybe overcome that and to present our true, authentic self.
Let's get it going.
Let's go.
Hello there, all of our boggies, brain on goggies. All of our brain on goddies. It's episode 333 of Brain on God. We're so excited to be with you here today.
Yep.
Whatever day you're listening to. Monday, Tuesday, is it Wednesday perhaps?
Thursday, maybe even Friday.
You know that song by the Black Eyed Peas where they say Saturday twice? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
That's because we always want Saturday to be twice as long.
We want Saturday to be twice. We want to party twice on Saturday. I don't know. Days are strange. How we have like days that we feel differently on. You know, like thank God it's Friday. It's usually because of the work week.
It has to do with the work week, I think.
But every day is like the case of the Mondays really bothers me. I think that's why I talk about that.
Wait, because you've experienced the case of the Mondays, or because of the way people talk about?
No, the way that people talk about Mondays.
Yeah,
it's like, oh God, it's Monday. You know, it's like, oh, I hate Mondays. It's like, it's Monday. I don't get it.
It's just another day.
Grow up.
You haven't gotten used to Mondays yet? How many years have you lived through? How many Mondays have you experienced?
Dude, you probably have experienced... How many Mondays have I experienced?
You should just accept Mondays by now.
Wait, there's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
And then I've been alive for 26 years. I can't do that math. I cannot do that math. 52, 520, that's 1,040... Let's say, okay, maybe like 1,100 Mondays I've had in my lifetime.
You've had 1,100
No, more
Mondays.
than that. I've had at least probably 1,250 Mondays in my life. But let's say the first like maybe 5 or 6 years, you know what I mean? I didn't really know about Mondays because I wasn't working.
Right.
Or I started
Mondays
working.
Didn't exist.
I started working at 7. You know how child labor
and that's when Mondays
is.
began.
But yeah, Mondays, man. Oh, geez. But the case of the Mondays that it's like it's another day, but everyone's so sad about waking up. Oh man, it's another Monday. It's another start of the week. You know, I feel like if you want to start your week out well, you can't be in that type of mindset. You know, where it's like, oh man, I'm waking up on Monday. Are you kidding me? Another Monday here again? Yeah, it's
Monday's
like
happening again. Yeah. I thought we had a Monday
like,
last week.
This is how the world works. Yeah,
Mondays.
Monday through Sunday, and for the Black Eyed Peas, there's 2 Saturdays, and that's how it works.
That's what we all want.
And we should be used to that by now, you know.
Yeah.
But it's weird that we give certain days an expectation,
and there's like an emotional attachment.
Right.
Wednesday.
Right.
Is mixed. You either feel good about it or you feel bad about it.
Wednesday, it's hump day.
It varies. You know, sometimes you're glad that you're halfway through the week. Sometimes you're like, oh, it's only Wednesday.
Exactly.
But it's only on Wednesday.
It's only on Wednesday.
That doesn't happen on Tuesday or Thursday.
Do you think that's because we're not very present as people?
And we're waiting for the weekend?
We're waiting for the weekend. You know something that my counselor said that was amazing to me? He said, we are looking to the future for salvation. We're always looking to the future for salvation. And for that reason, we can never enjoy actually being in the present because we're always looking to a future time where things are going to be better. So we get to Monday and we're bummed out because Monday is the furthest day from the weekend. Yeah, it's the furthest day, which is Saturday. So Monday is the furthest day from the weekend. So it's like, oh my gosh, I have 5 more days until I can be free. Right. And so that's why hump day is okay, because it's like, oh, the week's almost over, you know? And then Friday's like, thank God it's Friday. It's the last day before I can finally be free. Right. That's a really weird way to think. It's like we're always delaying the ability to be okay.
Right. And we have to wait for the weekend to be okay? No.
Gosh.
That reminded me of something that I heard a long time ago with the difference between working for rest or working from rest. So like the Monday's always going to be the hardest because you're trying to get to the point where you can rest at the end of the week.
Yeah.
But if you're working from rest and you've rested and you're like ready to go, Monday's like, all right, let's jump in. Let's do this.
Right. Because I'm rested.
Because you're rested.
And
You're ready.
The thing is, when you're working for rest, even it's like the wrong like motive behind going after work or whatever, and then you get to the weekend, you don't even rest. I feel like I see so many people that they're living for the weekend so that they can finally rest, and then once they get to the weekend, they're so stressed out from the week that they don't actually, because they're not living from rest, they actually spend their weekend just doing a bunch of stuff that doesn't fill them with rest. So even the weekend that they were waiting for isn't filled with rest because they're doing a bunch of things out of their own anxiety to like, I don't know, make themselves feel better or make them feel like they have rest or whatever, but they're running all over the place or they're doing chores, or most of our days off are just ways. I read this in, what's it called? I don't know. The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that by?
That's by John Mark Comer.
And he said most of the days off that we have are us just trying to make up time from like the lost time throughout the week.
Right.
So we're using our times off of rest to actually just work.
To do more work that we couldn't do during our work week.
It's so bad.
It's like we're trying to catch up on the work that we're trying to get away from.
No wonder we have a case of the Mondays.
Right. Because it's all starting over of just being overloaded with too much stuff to do. That we know at the end of the week, we're not going to be able to have it all done anyways.
That's wild. Are you guys sad yet? Because I sure am not.
Oh my gosh.
I sure am not. Psych.
I sure am. Psych.
I am sure. Okay. Anyway, well, we're so glad to join the podcast. I love that we got to talk about the Mondays, in case of the Mondays, before we get into the real depth of the conversation for today.
Yeah.
It's going to be super good. Today, we're talking about something called the community
of projections.
Thank you, Darryl.
Community of projections.
The community of projections. And it's a concept that you and I talked about a little while ago, probably like a year ago. A couple years ago, you think?
Over a year ago, for sure.
Yeah, we've been meeting for coffee for a long time.
Yeah.
Having conversations. And this is something, I think you coined it, the community of projections. And I was like, that's such a cool name to call it. But basically, it's the idea, it's a concept revolving around the idea that everyone wants to belong. You know, that everyone wants to be a part of a community, wants to be accepted, wants to be valued, wants to be seen, wants to be known. And because of that, we end up kind of doing a whole bunch of things to be known that might not actually be true to our actual selves. And so you kind of create communities where everyone's trying to be like somebody else who's trying to be like somebody else who's trying to be like somebody else. It's like a constant feedback loop of us trying to be accepted by one another, and it can be really unhealthy.
Yeah, there's like a societal standard of what's acceptable, and we're all kind of aware of it. And I think this, kind of takes place in smaller groups as well, of culture, of different societies. It looks differently, but there's some sort of general understanding of what's acceptable.
Right.
Whether that's written down or not. It's just like, this is the kind of person that is accepted in this group or this society. Right. And so we look at those and we want to be accepted. So we create some kind of persona to present to the group in order for our persona to be accepted. And, if we do it right, if we work the game right, it gets accepted. The thing that we present ourselves to be becomes accepted by the people in the group. And then we feel like some sort of acceptance, but really we know if that's not us, that's not us.
Right.
So our projection is being accepted, but we're not actually being accepted.
Right.
The thing that we have presented has become accepted, but we are still in the group not being accepted.
Right.
Because we have not allowed ourselves to actually show up and even given ourselves the chance to be accepted. Because we're afraid or whatever, feel like we're not going to be accepted if we show up.
Right. And this is huge in high school.
Yeah.
This is like, whoa.
I was homeschooled, so I can imagine, but I was at home. I was good.
Yeah, my family already accepted
But I get the experience. No, even being homeschooled, I still understood that when I was around non-homeschoolers, I felt like I need to not seem like a homeschooler in order to be accepted, Are
homeschoolers weird?
It depends.
I mean, you came out pretty normal.
Homeschoolers come in varying degrees, so... We're like, there are different types of homeschool groups. I think there's primarily two types of homeschool families. There's the homeschool family. It's very organized and structured, and almost feels like you wake up at the same time every day, like you're going to class and you just do it all at home. You have your mom there or someone there teaching you everything. You're doing your homework. You have like a set time frame from when you do schoolwork, when you finish, and then you have the other side where it's just free reign.
Right.
You can procrastinate as long as you want, as long as you get it done by the end of the month. That was the more of the homeschooling I was brought up in. I think it started more structured, when I was little, but
then your parents stopped caring.
Well, they had to work or not that they stopped caring, but I had a lot of siblings. I was the second youngest of 7. I think the trend goes, the more kids you have, the less the less they're paid attention to, the further along, you go. And
that's why I'm going to have 12 kids.
So that went the 12th one.
So none of them experience the attention they need.
So I learned how to procrastinate very well. Became a master of procrastination. Got all my stuff done.
A master procrastinator.
Yeah, a master procrastinator. A master procrastinator. So I knew how to get everything done. But that was my homeschool upbringing.
There is something to be said about procrastination. It does heighten, I think, your awareness. A master procrastinator, you get stuff done so quick. Anyway, that's a different topic altogether.
Yeah, but then the social dynamic of homeschoolers, there are varying degrees as well, because some people are like, the classic, what people might think of a stereotypical homeschooler, no social skills, knows a lot about really weird things. That exists. Which
you remind me of.
Thank you. I'm kidding. But I grew up with a lot of siblings, so I didn't really have that. It's weird when people tell me, "Oh, I would never guess you were homeschooled."
Right.
Because they have an image in their mind of what a homeschool looks like. Yeah, community in my house or the neighborhood. Still had neighborhood friends.
Some people in like those small communities have smaller class sizes than your household.
Right.
Yeah. It's like 5 seniors graduate. It's like you had 7 people, just your siblings in the house. Up. So you kind of had people to kind of bounce off, so you didn't become weird.
Yeah, and we were the party house. We were not a party, but
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
No, but all our friends would come over to our place usually because we already had a bunch of people.
Right. Yeah.
So my parents were cool with people coming over, friends coming over, and such.
Yeah.
But I was around all kinds of people all the time.
But when you were around non-homeschool kids, you would try and fit in.
Right. When I was around non-homeschool kids, I knew that there was some kind of persona that was normal to them.
Right.
Or and I felt the expectation whenever people realized I was homeschooled, and then suddenly there was a different way they were looking at me.
Oh, shoot.
It was weird. But it's the thing, like we have this way that we view each other or expectations we put on each other, and this like kind of norm that we have.
Right.
And then whenever we are going into an environment where we start experiencing the norm,
right,
when we're not part of the norm, we start evaluating like ourselves. Am I fitting into this? Maybe this doesn't always happen. Like I know that there are, maybe you're somebody who's very self-confident and you never had this kind of question.
Right.
I know personally I've had these experiences where I've gone to an environment with people that are different to me.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
How do you guys do life? How do I fit in? And
how do you operate?
How do I operate within this group or within this context?
Yeah. Because they might be looking for a certain thing that is going to allow connection to happen. I think that's what you're looking for.
Right. Yeah. Because totally looking for connection. Looking how does connection happen here? How does connection happen here? Right.
Right.
Totally.
And I think we don't trust the idea that you could actually be yourself and build up connection, at least in the beginning, especially growing up. I didn't believe that, right? So I felt like in order to connect with other people, I had to become somebody else than who I was. And that's maybe just tied to not feeling like you're enough in the first place, and that has to deal with shame and stuff like that. But I know that when I first got into 6th grade, that's when, I don't know what it is about middle school, but I guess I can only speak for myself. But when I got into middle school, at 5th grade, I was on top of the world. I'm talking ladies didn't even mind, okay? Like,
long hair,
you know what I'm saying? Yeah, just didn't even care. I was a player in 5th grade.
Oh my God. You got pulled.
Yeah, I had pull.
Yeah, pull in 5th grade.
In 5th grade, but I got to 6th grade, and then I started noticing people that were like a lot different than me. You know what I mean? That came from different backgrounds, or it was really like the skater kids that were popular at my middle school. And so I just and I had started skating a little bit, and it's like I became self-aware to the point like unhealthy self-aware, where it was like, I think I got to be like these kids in order to kind of fit in, And so I started slowly but surely projecting myself in a way, started cussing, didn't even know what cuss words meant. I think I just looked them up in the dictionary still, So, started cussing, started dressing like them. Like we had these crew pants that we would wear. They're like, we would always buy them at Active or whatever. There's like a company called Crew, and they have this sick black K on the back, and they're so expensive. They're like $60, $70 jeans or whatever. But that's like, those were the jeans to have as a skater. And so I would get like the Crew pants, wear all like Active shirts, brand name stuff, just trying to dress like them, look like them. I wished my name was Max because it seemed like no joke. It seemed like all of their names were Max. What? Yeah, they were just like all of the cool kids that everybody liked. Yeah, I think it was there was one Max Walagora. There was Max. Oh shoot, I'm not gonna remember their last names anyway. But there's like 3 Maxes in the group of like 10 guys, and I was like, I need my name to be Max. I wish I was Max because I was like, man, Aaron's such like a boring name. I want a name like Max. Anyway, but I tried to be like them, and I tried to project myself, and slowly but surely I started to notice I stopped being my actual self, and I started being that projection, what I mean? It's like, accept this version of me, you know what I mean? Like, accept what I have to offer you because I want to create that connection. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something that I guess whenever I first started thinking about this, I was thinking about it in context of myself first, right? So starting to realize I was doing this thing. But even just conversations with other people, realizing that it did seem to be a repeated experience,
right,
or more common experience than my own.
Right.
Other people, like what you were just explaining, relate with that idea of trying to be a certain way to fit in. I think it is extreme when we're young or in high school. But even when we graduate, and even when I was in college, and there's like graduating college, even there's still a societal norm or thing. A way to be, you know. I know that you were, I remember you talking about you were going to get your bike fixed or something, and somebody was talking to you.
Oh yeah, my motorcycle.
Yeah, I don't know if you want to tell the story, how many details you want to go into, but I can let you. Yeah,
basically, I have a motorcycle, beautiful Harley Dyna 2008. Her name is Diane. Okay, if you want pictures, I can send an email to yourbrainongod. I'm just kidding. We don't have an email.
Oh, but we have an email?
No. So I have this Harley Dyna, and I took it in to go get fixed because it was leaking, and I needed a new belt. And so I took it into this place called American Chopper, something like that. And I walk in, and I'm just like talking to about my girlfriend, how I was like hoping to get it fixed by Friday because I wanted to go, I wanted to take her out on a date on this motorcycle. And the way that the guy was talking to me was just ridiculous. Like ridiculous. And I don't mean to like judge him in any way, but he just immediately thought that I was like into like just being a player or something like that. And he was like talking really vulgar about like my girlfriend and what, like how you should operate relationships. And it's like, as long as she's got this, man, and as long as you can do this to her. And it was just like, whoa, like, dude, I mean, I've only been with her for like a month. So and I don't even operate that way anyway, but he was like cursing, and he was like, saying all these vulgar things to me, and maybe it was just because I was a guy, and he like, that's kind of I don't know,
it's like the guy
tough
talk.
Yeah, it was like guy talk. It's like locker room talk or whatever.
Weird. There's like this guy talk thing that exists.
Right. And I'm just going in to get my bike fixed, and I was friendly with them, and I didn't bring it up, and I wasn't like, hey man, listen, you shouldn't talk to me like that, I'm a Christian, you know what I mean, or something like that. But it's just strange that he thought that was the norm, or that he should say those things to me because that's how kind of things operate. I just had another recent experience too. I went into an actual bike shop, like bicycle shop.
Okay.
And like, maybe it's just because I'm a 26-year-old dude, but the guy starts like trying to sell me like a bike, like he's showing me all the bikes, and he's just cussing like nonstop. And I was like, this is not professional at all. Like when you're just saying the F word over and over again, like you're not relating to me. Like I don't relate to that. Like I don't really connect with that, but it's the projection of what maybe I'm 26-year-old dude,
So he thinks this is what you want. So he's going to act this way.
Right. So he's trying to connect with me. Yeah. Yeah, and I can still connect with you, but you don't need to do that to connect with me. And I think that's the problem with the whole community of projections, is like the idea that we think we need to do that kind of stuff in order to connect, that if I do these certain things, then you'll connect with me. It's like why I started cussing anyway. I mean, not that I cuss right now, but that's why I started cussing back in middle school, because it's like if I present myself as this tough, kid who doesn't play by the rules,
Right.
I play by my own rules, no one else's, not even my own.
Not even my own.
But if I play by my own rules, then these people will like me, or they'll accept me, they'll adopt me into their clique,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it's a true experience for me as well, seeing those kind of those conversations where people talk about things as if it's normal.
Right.
But then I've been in experiences, I can't think of something right now, but I know that I've been in situations where it's brought up that like nobody actually wants to talk about the thing.
Right.
We're just doing it just because it seems like the normal thing to do.
Yeah.
It's like there's this some kind of weird pressure to be a certain way that
Right.
it's not that one individual has put it on everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but it's like somehow as a community we have leaned in a certain direction of things to talk about when you're with guys, or when you're on girls, or when you're on
Right.
this group of people. They're like these topics that are
Right.
acceptable or maybe not acceptable or whatever, but we lean into those just because they're there.
Right.
And I think that whenever we go into, when we're talking about our desire to be accepted, it kind of makes sense that we want to talk about the things that other people are going to want to talk about.
Right. Yeah.
And so we start talking about the thing that we think other people are going to want to talk about, and then they'll, talk about it as well.
Uh-huh.
But behind the scenes, maybe nobody actually wants to be talking about that thing, but everyone's
Right.
thinking the same thing. Everyone's thinking they probably want to talk about it, so let's talk
Right.
about it.
Uh-huh.
C.S. Lewis talks about, in his book, The Screwtape Letters,
Mm-hmm. Really
this
good book.
concept is brought up. Yeah, it's a great book. Great book. If you haven't read it, pick it
Yeah.
up.
Right
Read
now.
it right now, after you're finished with the podcast.
Yeah.
Or you can pause it and start reading the book because it's that good. But he talks about this concept of the tactics of like the demons, or like the way the book is about the demon he's like assigned to a person trying to make him fall away from Jesus and kind of ruin his life and live his life like kind of wasted and
Right.
poor or like depressed and just feeling empty. But one of the tactics that they use, that C.S. Lewis writes in the book, is when you have a group of people together and they're making a decision about something, influence one of them to say something that nobody else is going to want to do, but they're going to be so kind that they're going to say yes to doing it, and no one's going to want to do it, but they're all going to go do it anyways because they
Jeez.
don't want to actually say what they want to do.
Right.
And that kind of experience, I think, happens with conversations too. It's like, well, this is kind of the thing we do, so I guess we
Right.
just keep doing it.
Right.
Even though I think there is a desire for authenticity and a desire for healthy vulnerability, and that gets starved whenever we try to just live on the level of the social norms or whatever,
Right.
And I think learning to recognize those moments and think, is this something that I really want to engage in, or just engage in it because it seems like the thing to do, the standard? It just seems normal,
Yeah.
right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We do ourselves a disservice
Right.
because we don't actually allow ourselves that genuine place of like being authentic to who we are or something like that, because we're just following the status quo of what the whole group or the collective the collective wants to do. Because if one person does it, and then it's like, well, I really like that person, and so I'm going to say yes to that, even though it might be a little bit on that, and then more people get involved, and then the majority kind of takes over for like, if you're the subtle minority, and it's like, well, if the whole group's going, I don't want to be left out, because I'm a part of this group, and so and it is interesting how we start to adopt values of a group,
Right. Yeah,
like you'll notice like friends that get really close, they start to dress like each other, they start to talk like each other, they're interested in the same things, and not all of that is unhealthy. I think there's there's something beautiful about the way that we mimic each other. And because if you have good values too, when I hang around you, I start to adopt those good values. But bad company ruins good morals. I mean, very simply, the Bible's really awesome. It just says something simple like that, right? But we can do ourselves a disservice because we're not actually being our actual selves, trying to fit in, and then we don't actually. People aren't actually seeing us for who we are. I think that's the problem with the projection. Is the projection that you push towards other people isn't actually you. And so, and I want to go back to this, what you were saying is in the very beginning, is that when they're loving you, they're loving your projection. They're not actually loving you, you know, or when you're projecting yourself in a group, when they're accepting your projection, they're not actually accepting you. And when they're, you know, laughing with your projection, they're not actually laughing with you. And so it's this, we project in order to find community and belonging, but it actually does the opposite for us. Yeah. And I think that's so important to know that we're actually working against ourselves when we project in a certain way, because that's the disservice that we're doing, is we're not giving our own selves a chance to be known and valued.
Yeah. Right. We're not giving ourselves the chance to actually be known and valued. I think it's good. It's like we're presenting this thing and we're experiencing some sort of acceptance because the thing we're presenting is being accepted. You know, not just a thing, but it really is, you know, it's part of us. I'm not going to say that's not part of us, but we know that maybe it's not what we actually want or the person we actually want to be. Right. And that's being accepted. And that feels kind of nice, but then we really know internally that we're not being accepted. Right. Because the person that we're presenting to be is what's being accepted. And we don't want to lose that because that's all we have right now. Mm-hmm. And what if I actually decide to show up and to do what I want to do, or say what I actually think about things, or ask the questions I want to ask, you know, or be the person I want to be? Mm-hmm. What's going to happen if I do that? Am I going to lose this acceptance that I'm feeling right now by presenting myself to be a certain way? Right. And I think that this has been what's the word I'm looking for? It's been made even bigger, the effect of it through social media. Yeah, for sure. With the standard of you post the good things on Instagram. You post your best moments on Instagram. You post all the good highlights, and which is fun to celebrate with people. But then once that becomes the thing that everyone sees, and if we somehow get our identity connected to that, like this is what people like. They like to see whenever I look this way, or when I'm doing these things. So I need to be doing more of these things and looking this way or saying these things. You know, it's suddenly only our best self is being accepted, but not our whole self. Mm-hmm. And that comes with a cost to our own soul. You know, like we feel a sense of emptiness when we know that. When we know that we are not fully there, and they're accepting the thing that's there, which is not fully me. Right. So can I actually fully be there and still be accepted? Right.
I think the idea is that we all want to be deeply known. You know, we don't. The idea in our culture is that to be known by a lot of people is to be known. Like I want to be famous, and that's where the social media thing comes in. It's like, look at me. You know, see me. And you could even notice in little kids, and I actually love it in little kids because it's super cute. When they draw something, they're like, come on, yeah. Look what I did. Look what I drew. Look what I made, Dad. Check out what I made. You know, and they're so excited for somebody to see what they created, who they are, like to notice the good in them, you know? And unfortunately, that becomes, the chase for a lot of people on social media. And what is a projection? It's an image that is presented, right? It's like you have an image in a projector and then it makes it bigger, right? So a social media platform is a way to get the image that you want, a curated image projected to the world. And so everybody's seeing you and you're getting likes and you're getting comments and people are commenting, you look so beautiful. Oh my gosh, you're so fun. Oh, I love your stories. And I've gotten caught up in it before, right?
Me too.
And there's definitely a whole lot of studies that every ding that you get, it releases dopamine in your mind, and I got another like, and I just recently had to download Instagram again just because we created the Your Brain on God account, and it is terrible. I'm struggling with it because I'm just lying and I'm like writing on my computer, and then it's like ding, and I look and it's the first thing I do is I just respond to this thing, right? That's a whole nother social media addiction topic, but we're presenting like this projection of who we are, and then we're maybe known by those 500 people that follow us, known in that sense, quotation known, by all those people, or by the thousands, or by the millions. Some people, have 40 million followers or whatever on social media, on Instagram or on YouTube. And so you're widely known, but you're not deeply known.
Right.
And I had this trouble. It was in college where I felt like everybody knew my name, but no one knew me. you know, because in freshman year of college, I was a wild, you know, Jesus loving, worshiping at the front, dancing, just had crazy hair, was just going nutso for Jesus, right? And so I would have people come up to me after service, I want to worship like you. I want to, you know what I mean? Like, that's so awesome that you do that. You know what I mean? I was known as like the curly kid hair, the worship kid at the front. So I was widely known, but I remember that same time that I was widely known, I was sitting in my buddy's dorm room, just bawling my eyes out, you know, crying, just saying, it seems like no one actually knows me. People come up to me and they're like, you're the curly haired worship dude, you know, but no one would, like, I just didn't know anyone deeply. And I wanted to be deeply known, but I was only widely known, and that wasn't enough, you know? Yeah. Yeah.
I had a similar kind of experience with feeling like the shallow part of me, I guess, was accepted and liked,
right?
But that the deeper parts of me were not accepted, or the deeper parts of me people just weren't interested in,
right?
And so I became very distant with kind of opening myself up, because I felt like as soon as I got closer to somebody that, and this is specifically with like girls, because when I was growing up, I had a lot of sisters. They had friends that come over and they like have a crush on me for a little bit, and then they'd stop having a crush on me. And so I felt like this created this mentality in my mind when it came to dating and stuff, even as I was a young adult, that the girls like me in the beginning, and then once they get to know me, they don't like me anymore.
Oh, geez.
And so I had this sense of, if I can't get close to people, because then they're just not going to like me, so I'm just going to create more distance.
Right.
And so I would create more distance and not allow that intimacy to actually take place. I want to allow that vulnerability to take place, because I felt like if it did, I would get hurt.
Right.
And so I'd allow, you know, shallow relationships and conversations, but I didn't want to go deeper because I was afraid of getting rejected.
Right.
I was okay with the best part of me or whatever being presented and accepted.
Right.
But I wanted to be deeply known, but I was too afraid, because I thought if I was, I would be rejected.
I'd be rejected. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the projection makes it easier. I was going to talk about this earlier too. It's a cover up,
right?
You know. And I had another time I was with my buddy Rob, and we were standing on the beach, and I just, you know, apparently I have all these moments where it's a self-realization. I just start weeping, but I started crying because I was like, man, I just feel like I'm a shell, you know, and it's like I have a different shell for these people and a different shell for these people, and I kind of project myself for these people and project myself for these people, but I still, and this has been a thing for me for a while. I think right now in my life, I feel the most known that I've felt just by growing and being more open and more vulnerable and actually presenting my real self. But I remember, you know, being on the beach and just like, you know, come on. I keep creating these shells, because honestly, it is easier to go surface deep. You know, people don't have to, you don't have to deal with the fear of rejection. And even if you do, someone rejects you, it's like, well, I didn't really show them me anyway, or they didn't really know me anyway. And so you can actually blame it on them for not knowing you. And like, you don't actually know my heart anyway. So it's chill, you know? And so we actually create, cycles of shallow relationships, because it's easier for people to love the projection, because there is a shame, you know, in us, for people, like you said. I think that is the experience of a lot of people. If you really knew who I was, if you really knew what I did behind closed doors, if you really knew the thoughts inside of my head, you wouldn't accept me. You wouldn't love me. I wouldn't belong. And so I'd rather have this relationship with you and be shallow and be my projection than actually go deep and have the possibility of you rejecting me. And it's sad, you know, it's sad that I see this in people that have had relationships a long, long time, 20 years. And, you know, 20 years plus. And, you know, I do weddings I DJ weddings. And there's some like best man speeches that I'm like, that's all you got? Like, it was like, you know what I mean? So they're like, I've known you since I was in 3rd grade. And they're like, I always love playing sports with you. I'm like, what? Like, you've had 20 years of relationship and you loved playing sports with them? Like, I'm not saying that's bad. I think that's awesome. But you could just tell there was no uncovering of like a deeper relationship or a depth between them. Like it was always just a surface level. Let's just not actually get to the bottom of these things. And I'm not saying that those were necessarily like that. I can only read into those things, right? But I am saying that I think that is a lot of people's experience to only go surface deep so that you don't actually know me. You know?
I didn't really feel like I had a close friend. I didn't even know what it meant to have a close friend until I was in college. And one of the first friends I got when I was in college, his name was James Christensen. Mm-hmm. He's still somebody super close to my heart. But he was the first person that I really felt like, whoa, friendship can be so real,
right?
And so deep, you know, like, and I didn't know how close of a friend could be until that moment, because the rest, like growing up until that point, I had a lot of friendships, you know, that were here and there, moving around, but we never really we never were intentional to get close and to be authentic,
right?
And it was a totally different experience of being known just as a friend,
right?
You know, and since then I've been more intentional, like with trying to figure out who are those people that I can actually be intentional with, you know, like you're one of those people for me, like totally want to be intentional with our relationship, with our friendship, to get closer, to be authentic, to actually know each other, not be afraid of being honest with what we actually feel or think, you know.
I cried this morning with you.
Right. Yeah.
I'm just a little shameful to admit that on a podcast.
No shame.
No shame.
No shame at all. That's courage. That's courageous. And our relationship dynamic is different to other friendships that I've had. You know, even now, it's not that every friendship needs to be super vulnerable and open and authentic. Authentic, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Open and vulnerable, maybe not as much. But to be intentional about creating these safe spaces and stepping into the space.
Right.
Because even if the space is there for us to be accepted as we truly are, it's still up to us to take that step, to show up. Right. And it's up to us to be courageous and to be vulnerable. Because it can be scary. Even if it is a safe space and we're going to be accepted, it still is scary to take that step of vulnerability, to open up. I wanted to read how Brene Brown defines shame. She talks about it in a couple different books. If you haven't read anything on Brene Brown, I highly encourage it.
She's awesome.
Her first book I read was Daring Greatly, and she talked about shame being the fear of disconnection. And I think that at the core of what we're talking about, that's what it is. That's what's happening. That's the reason we present our best self, or we create this projection of who we want other people to accept, because we think it's going to be accepted, because we're afraid of disconnection, right? That's why I don't want to open up. That's why I don't want to be vulnerable and honest, even though the vulnerability and the honesty and the authenticity is what truly drives connection.
Right.
You know, that's what actually makes us connected.
Yeah.
And we have a shame that stops us from doing that. The fear of disconnection stops us from actually getting true connection.
Yes.
The fear of disconnection stops us from connecting with people. Right. But we have this desire to be known and to be seen and to be loved and accepted. But Brene Brown says that shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging.
Jeez.
And it's that experience and that feeling, I think, that drives us to that point of settling for a substitute connection.
Right.
You know, settling for the facade being connected.
And that is, I like how she said it, it's a painful feeling. That fear of not being enough. You know, that's a painful feeling that someone could reject me, who I am, you know, and then living in that shame, and then choosing the projection lifestyle versus authentic community and authentic relationship, because the feeling that somebody else could say no to me, you know, could say not just to me, but to my like being, you know, that there is something inherently wrong with me that is not worthy of acceptance from love. You. So it's so much easier to stay on the projection level. Let me give you this image. Let me show you what I want to show you, the pieces of me that I want to show you, all the goods that I want. It's so funny because I've dealt with this a lot in my life, but that it has that in like, in more intimate relationships or, where I love the beginning part, and then they actually get to know you,
Right.
I love the like, I'm awesome, huh? And I'm getting better at that of actually, showing my true self and letting people in, and allowing them to see these parts, because I'm starting to realize, man, like I'm actually good,
Right.
there's good, and God calls me good, so you can see me as good, and I'm starting to be like, whoa, I'm good, and I don't need to be afraid of that. But it is painful, that idea that man, someone could say no to my being. It's like, yeah, here's the projection. Let's just go with that.
Because it's safer.
Let's go, let's go hang out. Let's go skate. Let's go surf. You know what I mean? Let's go like play sports together, and never like really connect on that level, because then we never have to deal with the pain of it. But we do sacrifice the ability to genuinely connect with somebody. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's where loneliness comes in. That's why a lot of those social media, I almost said social media tyrants. What are they called? Social media gurus? No,
I don't know.
Influencers.
Okay,
Tyrants.
The tyrants on social media.
That's why the tyrants on social media. That a lot of them feel alone. I've seen documentaries where it's like, I'm exhausted. I'm constantly feeding these people this image of myself, and I'm constantly getting this love, this fan love by these people who don't really know who I am. I am sad, and I'm not doing well. And I wake up in the morning and I'm not happy to get on social media and write these posts and write these long things and encourage people, because I'm not actually known. And it makes lonely people. The community of projections makes lonely people.
Yeah.
Because we are sacrificing because of our fear of disconnection, we are sacrificing connection.
Right.
And that is crazy. Yeah.
But it feels so much safer, but it's so destructive.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the reasons I can understand why we do that is because the pain of being rejected, if we do truly show up,
right,
feels like so much greater than not being accepted in the first place.
Right.
And just presenting something to be accepted.
Right.
At least this will be accepted. At least this version of me is accepted. Rather than this is really me and then getting rejected.
Right.
Right? The pain of loneliness might be easier to bear. But that's only for so long.
Right.
Because if we look at, there's a lot of studies looking into social media and its effect on emotional health among teenagers and young people, and I think in general, but especially in a younger group, the effect of social media has been the social media has been connected to the skyrocketed increase in depression and loneliness and attempted suicide.
Right.
And it's this desire to be connected, but the fear of being rejected, that causes us to put this front up, because at least we feel some sort of connection, even though we're still lonely.
Right.
We feel some sort of acceptance, even though we're still lonely.
It's like a taste.
Yeah, it's like a taste of it. Mm-hmm. But we can only go with a taste of it for so long before we decide to start giving up. Maybe think it's not worth it. This isn't actually what I want. I'm not actually known. And if people really knew, especially if it's something we carry on for a long time, I can't imagine the pain and the fear of actually showing up after we've presented ourselves to be a certain way.
Right.
Like all the social media influencers that you're talking about. If one day they decided, you know what?
I'm done.
I'm done. I can't even.
That's crazy.
Even if they just stopped, it's like suddenly that's going to reflect on who they are. Right.
Right.
Even if they didn't come out and say like, this is actually really hard for me, and I'm feeling so much stress and sadness and loneliness, and it's causing anxiety in my life.
Right.
Even if they didn't do that and they just decided to not post anything, if they're so well known that people are going to be asking questions and be making up ideas of what happened or whatever, that could be hard to deal with too.
Right.
And this fear, or I don't know, it hurts my heart to think about how easy it is to just allow our best self to be presented.
Right.
Quote unquote best self. Because that's not, if it's not truly who we are, there's so much damage that could be done. And there's so much missing from the world, because each person that's doing that is not actually being in the world, and they have something to add. We all have something to add to the world and to our communities.
Right.
And the more we present ourselves to be a different way, the less we are actually adding to our communities what we have the potential to add to our communities.
Right.
Because we're trying to add the same thing that other people are adding.
Right.
But the thing is, if everyone's doing this, nobody is presenting their true self.
Right.
And we have this community of projections.
Right.
And everyone's trying to be accepted by the other person who's trying to be accepted by the other person who's trying to be accepted.
It's a feedback loop.
Yeah, and because that the person we present gets accepted, we think this is what we need to do and who we need to be.
Right.
But if we're all doing that, we're all filling this gap,
right.
Of who we are and what's actually being accepted.
Mm-hmm.
That's so damaging to society, to
right.
community, and to groups, and to friendships.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more life that can be experienced when we decide to be vulnerable mm-hmm. and authentic and to show up.
It takes bravery.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because you have to be willing to face the fear of rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's brave. You have to be able to say, hey, even if these people don't accept me, there's someone out there that will, or even not that, but I accept myself. And even if nobody accepts me, or I would say the best way to do it is God has accepted me. And so I'm acceptable. And he's already accepted me. He already chose me a long time ago to be accepted. And so I actually don't need you to be accepting of me for me to be okay, and then you could actually start living free. But that's still, no matter which way, you take it, it requires bravery to actually step out, And while you were talking, I was thinking about those different passages in the Bible, like Zacharias. What's his name? Zacharias? Oh my gosh, why can't I remember his name right now?
But we just call him Zach.
Zach, yeah. When he's in the tree.
Oh, Zacchaeus.
I didn't know what you were talking about. Zacchaeus, when he's like, he's a tax collector. He's got it made in the shade. He's making all this money. He has one encounter with Jesus, and he's like, hey, I'm going to give everything back 4 times to everybody that I've cheated.
Right.
It's like, whoa, what? That's crazy. That's a crazy shift, right?
Yeah, that's courage.
That's courageous to say, like, I've been so transformed just by having a conversation, you inviting me into your house, I'm going to give back 4 times whatever I've stolen from these people back to them. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes we need a moment of inspiration where it's saying, I'm done. I don't even care about the repercussions of this. Hey, listen, everybody that I've been influencing, the 1 million followers that I have on YouTube or whatever. Yeah. I'm saying no to all of this right now. I need to take a break for my own health. And to actually, that takes so much courage, And I think it does take a almost like a moment of revelation, of like, holy moly, this is not doing me well. I need to take a step off of the cliff here. Allow myself to, people don't like it. They might say a whole bunch of stuff on there. I'm not going to go through the comments,
right. I'm not going to read don't read the comments.
Don't read the comments. Yeah. I'm
Stop reading the comments.
Yeah. Turn the comment ability off or whatever, the comment function off, and just go ahead and do it. Do what's healthy for your actual heart to be who you are. And I love what you said too. So you said a lot there. So I'm just trying to respond to everything that you said. Because you said that you're not actually being productive for the community, like, because the more that you allow yourself to just stay in your projection state, the more disconnected you get from your actual gifts and your talents, from your actual genuine self and what you care about, right?
Yeah.
And when we're walking out of sync with what our gifts and our talents and kind of our I guess I would say our calling is, right? The more we end up just kind of settling in life in general, right? And different things, because we're not actually living out of the substance of who we are, the essence of who we are. We're kind of just living in the projection state. And so you think about a projection too. This is going to be good. Follow me on this one, Darryl.
Gotcha. Going with you. Let's go.
Projections, you can wipe through them.
Right.
Like a projection is not solid.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a projection of something, right? You can walk through it. It's air. It's not actually there. So you actually lose the substance of who you are and what you're actually called to. The longer that you stay, and the projection, the further that what you get away from your gifts and callings, you actually lose substance in your words and your calling and your purpose, because you're living out of a projection state, you know. But when you allow yourself and you take the bravery, the time to say, hey, I'm going to live out of who I actually am. I'm going to receive the acceptance. I'm going to accept myself. I know that God accepts me. I'm going to live out of this place. Your actual calling, you become substantial, right? So what you offer to the community, what you offer to people, what you offer to relationships is actually productive. It's fruitful because you're not living from air. You know what I mean? Like you're not living from the projection state. You become solid. And people like solid people. You know, they like soul food people, you know, where it's like, man, I get around you and it's like, cool, you just fill me up when I get around you. You can't fill somebody else up if you're living as a projection. Like all that you'll be able to feed them is is air. You know what I mean? If that makes sense. I'm trying to say it in a really amazing way, but
no, I think that's really good that we lose substance. We lose substance whenever we are not being authentic to who we actually are.
Right.
You know, the things that we say carry less weight.
Right.
We'll be talking just to be talking, and there's less substance there. We will be offering less because we're not actually offering us.
No.
Right? We're trying to offer something else that we don't actually have.
Right.
And because it's not who we are, you know. I was just trying to find Brene Brown's, what she says is the antidote of shame. And she says that empathy is the antidote of shame. I think we can talk about shame more detail in another podcast, but empathy, the ability to allow ourselves to feel. She talks about having empathy for ourselves.
Yeah.
And being okay with feeling whatever we're going to feel and allowing people the same privilege. Right. So if I am okay with you not projecting yourself to be a certain way, and I'm like, you know what, I'm just going to create space for you to be you and authentic.
Right.
I'm not going to try to make you be a certain way or judge you if you suddenly aren't being this this projected self that's meant to be, the societal standard. I'm just going to let you be you.
Right.
And see you for who you are. And then I gave that same privilege to myself when I can allow myself to just show up and be who I am.
Right.
And be okay and, feel the things that I need to feel if I'm hurt or if I'm sad or if I'm scared, and not try to cover it up with something else.
Right.
And the same thing for you. If you're hurt, sad, or scared, not to try to make you cover it up. Like, okay, well, don't talk about that because, we don't do that.
Right.
We're men.
Yeah, exactly.
Suck it up. We don't cry or whatever.
I cry way too much.
No, not
too much. Not too much. I cry a lot.
You just cry when you need to. And that's okay.
Yeah, I cry when I need to. Thanks, Darryl.
For every man out there, cry when you need to.
Cry when you need to.
It's okay.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, but this idea of acceptance and compassion and courage, like you were talking about, the bravery that it takes to truly show up.
Right. And
I think that is part of this solution to trying to get rid of the projections in the community, is to show that it's what it looks like to show up,
right,
and be fully confident, knowing what you were saying just before, knowing that we are accepted,
right,
if at least by God and nobody else,
right,
that we are truly accepted. And I think the idea that if we can have in our mind that a lot of people around us who wouldn't be accepting us as we come forward probably are having a hard time accepting themselves.
Right.
And if we are rejected by people who are wanting us to be a certain way, it's probably because they think they need to be a certain way.
Right.
So when they see us not being that way, they think it's wrong.
Right.
But whenever we can just accept somebody as they are and show what it looks like to accept ourselves as we are, I think we set an example for the people around us and kind of start changing that culture of we need to be a certain way. We need to do it like this. We can't do these things. I remember I was in a class. It was a personal psychology class. And I don't know if I've told you this story before, but I was in this class and we were talking about these emotional intelligence and emotional needs that people have just, in general. And there's an older guy in the class. He wasn't like a lot older than me, but he was, 10, 15 years older than me. He was like just a generational gap enough to kind of be different. But he had this idea in his mind that men don't cry, right? That's what he literally said that in the class. Right. And like when the teacher talked about crying and the stigma of men crying or showing emotion. And he literally was saying, no, men don't cry. It's like, that's just what you do when you're a man. You just don't cry.
You just don't cry.
Yeah. And he had this, this idea in his mind that if you're a man, you don't cry. You don't show hurt. You don't show sadness. You suck it up and you move forward because you're strong.
Right.
And that's what it meant to be a man. And that was the societal standard that he grew up understanding.
Right.
Right. That's what he was trying to live into, and the person he was projecting to be. And not, maybe he doesn't, I mean, I would be very surprised if he has no emotions, or if he doesn't have any kind of sadness or a desire to cry. Because our minds and our brains and our bodies, and biologically, we have a release that happens when we have tears.
Right.
It releases stress and anxiety when we literally cry.
There's like cortisol in your tears.
Yeah, there's cortisol in our tears.
Makes you stressed.
Yes. And so our tears are a way for our bodies to relieve stress and anxiety.
Right.
And whenever we have an idea that we can't show our tears, we can't cry, we try to hold all this stress and all this anxiety that's wanting to leave our bodies.
Right.
And because of the societal standard or norm that was pushed much more on an older generations or generation before ours, I think with our generation, it's a lot easier for us to cry or to show emotion, because now there's a lot of talk about the importance of vulnerability and honesty and the emotional expression.
Yeah.
But whenever,
at least in our communities,
right? Maybe not everywhere, but at least in our communities. But even conversations I've had with people who are a generation before us, that wasn't normal for them growing up. They're learning to allow themselves to express that way, those kind of emotions. You know, the guys specifically learning to be okay with having pain, and learning to be okay with having sadness, and breaking away from these societal standards and these projections that we are told we need to be creating, and allow our true selves and our honest self and our fullest self to be present.
Yeah. I'm glad I grew up in this generation, because I'm doing the kind of emotional work that maybe my dad is doing in his 50s. You know, so like he's like just learning about this kind of stuff. He Brene Brown really helped him out a lot, you know what I mean, with vulnerability and with shame and with uncovering those things, and, you know, being okay with accepting the things that you've done and moving past those things, that kind of stuff. And that really impacted him. But he's doing it when he's 50. I'm doing it in his 50s. I'm doing it in my 20s. Right. So there's like a 30-year gap there of his generation didn't grow up like that. So it was that, you know what I mean? It was like a guy is supposed to be this way, you know what I mean? So there was a lot of the, you know what I mean? You're supposed to play sports, and, you know, you're supposed to, you know, you're not supposed to cry, and you're supposed to be tough, and, you know, those types of things. And I think there is an aspect of that in like just masculinity in general of being strong, but that doesn't translate to not crying. You know what I mean? Or that doesn't translate to not being vulnerable or not being afraid. You know what I mean? I think there is something that is, I would say maybe inherent in males, you know what I mean, of being courageous, you know what I mean? Wanting to stand up and wanting to, you know, get stuff done, you know? Like I think
testosterone.
Testosterone.
Which is biologically more present in males generally.
Yeah, exactly. But that doesn't, we've translated that to projecting in a certain way of what that should look like in a male, which is not crying or something like that. So I'm doing kind of the groundwork of that and getting healthier as a male, knowing what, real masculinity looks like, what it looks like to be a man, but you know what I mean? But to kind of change some of those meanings from the previous generation, right? But it's way better for me. It's easier for me because I'm doing it in my 20s. I don't have to unlearn as much stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So we have a whole generation. You know, you said that guy was 60 in your class or something like that.
Oh no, he was probably in his. By the time I was like 20, he was maybe 40.
Oh, okay, 40. Okay, but he was still in the generation before you.
Oh yeah.
But you know, he has 20 more years of unlearning to do. If he's been believing that for 20 more years than maybe you have, you know? Right. So that's a big gap there where it's like, it does take a while for your brain to unlearn some of those things because we naturally live into those tendencies. And sometimes, this is actually a really good thing too. Sometimes the projection becomes so real, you forget who you are and you're only living in the projection. And then anything that comes, you know, your way, maybe truth that comes your way that says like, hey, this is not actually who you are. It's like, what are you talking about? This is all I've known. You know, because at some point it becomes a shift to where it's like, it's no longer just like struggling to be your projection. That's just, It does become in a sense who you are, where it's like,
that's all you know to be.
Right.
That's
For the
all you know
last
to be.
20 years, I've been projecting myself to be this tough guy who never cries. What do you mean that's not who I am? That's all I know. And then that projection actually becomes your floor, you know what I mean? Of like what you're actually standing on, and you'll actually fight to maintain a projection that isn't you, and that's a dangerous territory to be, because now you're protecting your own loneliness and disconnection from people. Right? When you start getting in front of your projection, you're like, hey, don't come for this thing. You know what I mean? Like, this is who I am. And this kind of goes back into even the first episode of not wanting your beliefs to change, you know what I mean? Or not wanting yourself to change, or not being okay with another thought process kind of being an affront to, I think I've said the word affront in every podcast. I apparently really like that, but not wanting something to confront that in you, because, hey, this is what I believe, you know what I mean? Like, this is it. But we are actually guarding our own loneliness, our own disconnection, our own shame, and we are standing toe to toe against truth to keep our projection safe. And that becomes a really dangerous place. And what you were talking about, it's like projections. Now I'm projecting so that I can be like you, who's projecting to be like this person, who's projecting to be like this person. And then everyone in the community, everyone's lonely, everyone's afraid, everyone's struggling, no one's being vulnerable, everyone's just on the surface. And we have a whole community of unhealthiness and shame, because we're all just not willing to be brave enough to take a step off of the cliff. Right. And to be actually who we are, to kind of relearn or unlearn some of the patterns that we have created.
Yeah.
Dang.
So we encourage you, listeners,
yes,
to step out and be authentic, and to take the risk, knowing that you are loved and accepted, trusting that the closest people to you will love and accept the true you.
Right.
Who you really are. And it might be painful and scary, but the disconnection that we feel when we're not truly being ourselves it will continue to stay there until we decide to actually show up. Yeah. Brené Brown, she uses this as a reference, but she's quoting somebody else. She talks about being in the arena. When you're vulnerable, when you're living vulnerable, you are in the arena. And it's this picture of being in the arena and fighting to survive and to win, and you're competing. You're the one who's inside the arena, and there are audiences and crowds and stands full of critics. But it's not the critic that counts, because you're the one inside the arena. Right. And so you turn off the comments, the comments don't count. The critic doesn't count. They're not inside the arena with you, learning to do the hard thing, and to live and to survive, and to do the real and authentic and courageous life. Right. And so we encourage you to do that, to step out, to search yourself, and to know who you really are, and to not be afraid to be your whole self. Right. Oscar Wilde said, "Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken."
Come on, Oscar Wilde. And I will say this as well. The more you let go, the more you have. And Jesus says this. He says, if you lose your life, you'll save it. And I think it's just such beautiful wisdom, because I realized the more I tried to get people to accept me, the more I felt alone. And the more, the more I just lived out of a place of acceptance. We talked in the very beginning of living for rest versus living from rest. I could say, translate that to acceptance, living for acceptance versus living from acceptance. Yeah. It just changes everything. And when you live knowing that you're already accepted and you're already valuable, you're already loved, and then you stop needing, to project yourself in order to fit in with a certain community to be okay or to be enough, you'll start to realize that people that actually matter will come around in your life that genuinely see you, and I mean it when I say I probably have the deepest relationships in this time in my life than I've ever had, because I've allowed people to see me, and I've allowed people in, and it's actually what the human heart desires. Is to be close and to be connected. And when you start actually embracing connection and step off that cliff, you'll have people that will jump with you. you know, and there will be people that are like, and even if they don't jump with you right on the spot, they'll see your life that you keep on jumping and you keep on getting vulnerable. And they're like, hey man, or hey lady, you know, I want what you want, or I want you what you have. I mean, you know, and you're taking these risks, and I want to live vulnerable like that. I want to live bold like that. You know, I want to be the one in the arena. I don't want to project myself anymore. I want solid relationships. I want fruitful community. I don't want to be like somebody else's projection who's trying to be like somebody else's projection. I don't want to, you know, I want to step out of this loneliness, out of this thing. And so it is a courageous journey, and it's a hard journey. It's a mind shift for sure.
Yeah.
But it's worthwhile.
Absolutely.
It's worthwhile to go after a genuine community, not living in the community of projections, but living in the community of genuine and authentic people who are willing to do life together and willing to open up, willing to embrace the fear of disconnection, you know, to move past shame and to grow. That's where freedom comes. So encourage you guys, do it. Just do it. Nike.
Not sponsored by Nike.
And we're not, this podcast is not affiliated with Nike. But we love you guys. You're incredible. Thanks so much for joining us. Give us a follow on Spotify, on iTunes, and we'll be back real shortly with another episode of Your Brain on God. Love you guys so much. You're incredible. Peace.
Out.